So grab your Bible, turn to Exodus, and easy to find, second book in the Bible. So easier than it is for me to open this. There we go. All right. Yep, Exodus, and we're going to be in chapter 13 today. Again, we've been looking at this theme of meeting God in the wilderness. And so wilderness being desert and not, forest. And the idea behind that is that that's where God is most evident when we find ourselves in a place of dryness or sorrow or concern or fear or worry, all those things that kind of come with the idea of a desert place. So today, crossing the impossible, that's what I'm calling it, crossing the impossible. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of it, but when I was a kid, I used to watch Star Trek TV shows all the time. Before the movie. I remember going to see the very first movie way back when, forever. But when I was a kid, I'd always watch the show. And part of the cool part of me with the show was there was always an impossible scenario. Like whatever happened, it didn't matter if you've watched it. So many shows are this way. But every episode, they would get into some kind of bind or situation that was impossible to get out of. Like there's no possible solution here. And then there would either be something that we overlooked as an audience, some little thing that we didn't see previous that pops up that provides a solution, or there would be some imaginary thing like crank the flux capacitor and then that'll fix it, some kind of imaginary solution that's not reality, but that would solve the problem and somehow they would get out of it. But in real life, and I think everybody knows, there's times when there's no way out. There's times when the reality is there's no way out. There's no way around. There's no way under. There's no way over. There's no way through. Like there's literally no way out, no answer. And the only solution then would be a miracle because there is no other way. There's no other option. And a miracle is, by definition, making the impossible possible. So you need that because we're in an impossible situation. And most people, fair enough, when you think of miracles, you go immediately to sicknesses, whether it be cancer or Alzheimer's or some kind of disease, diabetes, I don't know, some kind of ailment or something that does not have a known cure. And therefore, we need a miracle because there's not a cure. The crew of the Enterprise in Star Trek is not going to fix the problem. There is no known solution, so we need a miracle. But there's a lot of other impossible situations besides sickness. And some of you know, maybe you've been there, being lost in the desert. I mean, you get far enough back in the superstitions alone, you're in trouble. Being lost in the desert can be an impossible situation. Being lost in a jungle can be an impossible situation. Probably the more terrifying to me and the more hopeless is being lost at sea. Because you're an invisible dot in the blue for hundreds of miles in every direction. Being unable to have children. That could require a miracle depending on the situation. So there's other things, but the issue is that all these impossible situations require more than a human solution. They require God. All of them require God. And there are times, and this is the key here, when God himself may lead us into those situations. How can God be good and still do that? Why would he do that? Why would he ever do that? I'll tell you why. Because when he delivers a miracle, you go from why God, to, oh, Lord, you are God alone. Only you, God, could have done that. Only you. So here's kind of your main point. We jump into this, and you'll know this story well. But when our circumstances make us believe that any hope is impossible, remember, God is never hindered by any obstacle. I didn't say how he's going to respond. I'm just saying, don't forget that there is no obstacle that he is hindered by, slowed by, prevented by, or whatever else. So we already know the story because we've been going through it, but God sends Moses to the Israelites to free the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. He demands their freedom because God told him to. Pharaoh says no. There's 10 plagues. including the Passover as the last one. And then he releases them, and maybe 1 million or more slaves go free, and they are led out. That's what Exodus, they are led out. And as they go out, they head towards the promised land, but they do that via Mount Sinai, which is not on the way, but God is bringing them to Sinai first to meet them, and then he's going to take them to or lead them to the promised land. But at the moment that we're at in the story, and I'm not in the right book here, but I'm going to get there. Here we go. At the moment that we're at in the story, they seem to be a little lost, but they're not. God has intentionally led them into a dead end. In fact, they have mountains on one side, and described as a wall, almost like a barrier, to say the least. Desert mountains on one side, and the Red Sea on the other side. But God's working a plan here, and his plan is to finish the fight with Egypt. And he's going to do it through one of the most awesome displays in recorded history. And I said it last week. I'll say it again. Remember, there were 1 million+ witnesses to this. It's easy for us to go, yeah, that's just a story somebody made. That's just a story Moses made up. The words that you are reading, the page that you hold in your hand, was written within a year of this happening. So you're talking about 1 million people saw this occur, and not one of them stepped up and said, Moses, you're a liar. That didn't happen. Not one of them. So there is good, strong evidence, at least in the witnesses, to believe that this actually occurred, okay? So let's go into verse 5, pick up kind of where we left off. We're in chapter 14, and I said 13, sorry, I mean 14. He says, when the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his servants was changed towards the people. Now, we don't know exactly what happened. We know God's playing a role in this. You'll see that. But we also know that he's probably looking around and the bills aren't getting paid. Nobody's picking collecting the corn or doing the work in the fields. Nobody's building the buildings anymore. Everybody's lost their slaves. And besides all that, Pharaoh. Egypt is in ruins because of the plagues. So they need help more than they ever did. And everywhere you look, somebody's dead. Pharaoh's own son is dead. So somewhere between lack of help and bitter anger, furious vengeance is brewing anyway, okay? And they say, what is this that we've done? We let Israel go from serving us, from being our slaves. So he made ready his chariot, and he took his army with him, and he took 600 chosen chariots. Literally, the word is like choice. In other words, we would say the special forces. So he took 600 special forces here. SEAL Team 6, right? But 600 of them. All right? And all the other chariots, not just those guys specifically noted, but all the rest of them too, with officers over all of them. So it's the full force of Egypt. And the Lord now hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the people of Israel while the people of Israel were going out defiantly. Defiantly doesn't mean arrogantly. It's just, Moses is pointing this out as he wrote it to say that we were going out in defiance of their grip on us because God had released us, and he's pointing that out because, ironically, their attitude is going to look a lot different in this story in just a minute. So they're all bold and defiant right now, but here comes an army. All right, and then verse 9 says, the Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses, and chariots, and his horsemen, and his army, everybody. And they overtook them and camped at the sea by Pahaharot in front of Baal Shephon. We talked about where those places last week, and then I'll come back to it in a minute. But when Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they greatly feared. That word Egyptian means that, for sure. But there were a lot of Hebrew commentaries, old rabbis, that wrote and considered that a proper name of a spirit, a demon. And so that name there, they associate with this demon that is leading the people of Egypt and bearing the name of Egypt to face and kill them and destroy them. And here they are with their God, Jehovah, Yahweh. So before we go on one more time. Let's consider where this might have been. Okay? So, and this is helpful because if I'm standing here telling you a million witnesses saw it and it happened, then we ought to be able to find some evidence or reason to believe that it did. So again, some say, I pointed this out last week, that they crossed up at the Suez Canal and then they went all the way down to the very tip of the Sinai Peninsula, and that's where Mount Sinai is. I don't agree with that. I think Mount Sinai is in Saudi Arabia now. So do more and more people. We talked about this weeks ago. You can go back and look, or you can go online and find it. These are just things I pulled. So, but that they crossed, one thought is they crossed there at the Straits of Tiran, across that area right there into Saudi Arabia. Okay, don't worry about all the names. That's not as big a deal. Just showing you a route. Another, before you go, wait, go back. Sorry, I stumped you up. Up to the top, see where it says Nuweiba Beach, or however you say that word? That's another popular idea of where they crossed, and I am fairly in that camp as well. I think either of those two could have been it, but there's a good reason to believe that one, and I'll show you. So, go ahead, next one. So that's the same route, but that's showing you the difference in how far north it would have been if they crossed there. But either way, Mount Sinai is still believed to be down there in Saudi Arabia. So next one. That is what they're calling a beach. It's massive, it's huge, that's recent, but it's been that way forever. But you could see mountains that appear to be a wall of mountains right there, and the sea behind you, and you have this trail coming in, really only one way in and one way out for the most part. So that would be a very good argument that could be where they were walled in, trapped. You would definitely, if your entire people were right there, to say that you were trapped would be an understatement. You would definitely be pinned in. So that could be that, and we'll come back and look at a few more things in just a second. But just imagine it. Within a week's time, you've made it here. You're at this beautiful location. I mean, I know maybe you're out in the desert. Maybe it's kind of weird, but at the same time, feelings are still high. You're still marching. You're free. You're in your own. You're going to be with your God. He's leading you with this cloud and fire, and now you've got over by the beach and this beautiful view of the Red Sea. And even the mountains are beautiful, at least I think so, because I live in a place like you do where there's desert mountains. I think they're gorgeous. And so the same idea, desert mountains, all this stuff, it's just probably this beautiful place. It's coming up nighttime. The sun's starting to drop. And if you know anything, about even our own area, but about the desert, if you get on a mountaintop or a high space, you can see forever. And you can see what's going on for miles away by dust and stuff that's in the air. During the Apache Wars, the natives and the U.S. Army both used that to see more than 20 plus miles ahead, but they couldn't see people. They would just see dust like rising and know there was an army coming, or braves or whomever they were. They would know. And so I imagine, we don't know this, Bible didn't tell us, but you can probably imagine that maybe they have some lookouts up on those mountaintops. Maybe they're watching the sunset towards Egypt, back in that western direction, and thinking how beautiful it is and whatever else, and then all of a sudden they see the dust. And it's probably getting bigger and bigger and bigger and higher, because it would have been easily more than 1 million horses and wheels turning and everything else. You're talking about a massive army that's come, not 1 million, I'm sorry, 1,000, more than 1,000 coming towards them. So, it's easy to talk about theology. We love talking about theology. I do too, man. God's so cool. This about God, that about God. God's awesome. And people post memes online all the time. You've seen them all, you know. God's good all the time. God's good. You know, I'm not making fun. I'm just saying. Or, hey, you know, all the other cliches. When he closes one door, he opens another. All those things are great until you're the one. Yeah, I see you, sis. Till you're the one that's confused. You're the one that's frightened. You're the one that's facing life and death all of a sudden. Till you're the one that doesn't understand why. Until you're the one that's looking at God going, wait. Why? Where did this come from, or why did this happen? And then all of a sudden, you know, His ways are not our ways is not acceptable. Like, if you're honest, that's just not good enough. And that's really where these people are. And look at verse 10, carrying on in Exodus 14, it says, the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. Doesn't tell us what they said here because they're not actually speaking to him. They're saying to Moses here. So their complaint is against God. They're complaining here, but their attention is on the person who's representing God. Something to keep in mind, by the way, if you're thinking about getting into Christian leadership, just saying. So he goes on and he says, is it because there's no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? So they're kind of blaming Moses, but God's there too. What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we said? Didn't we tell you? That's what they're saying. Didn't we tell you when we were in Egypt, leave us alone? Let us just be slaves. Let us serve Egyptians. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. Think about those words. It would have been better for us to whatever. It would have been better for us. That's the problem, right? We decide. And then we want God to jump on board. I'll tell you what's going to be best for me, Lord, so why don't you bless it and make it so? I'll tell you what's going to be best for me, so why don't you get behind it and make it happen? Here's what they're really saying. Think about what they're saying here, man. Dig down a little bit and think. What they're really saying is, it would have been better if we never met you. That's what they're saying. Because upon meeting God, he delivered them from slavery. And they're saying it was better where we were. It would have been better if we never met you. Now, we would never claim as Christians to say that we would say such a thing, but we do. There are times when we do. We may not mean it that way in those so many words, but there are times when we do. I don't know about y'all, but your brain starts to linger back to your past before you started following Christ. And you start thinking about, was it really all that bad? And there were some good times, though. Boy, I used to love to do this, and this, you know. Or wow, that person once upon a time that I was with. Whatever it is, I don't know. I'm not trying to dump my noise or get you to dump yours. I'm just saying, if you stop and you think, there are times where we drift back to our old self and think, it really wasn't that bad. Maybe you're still battling with that right now. And here's the deal. And this needs to just be, if there's a point for you to have stuck in your head as a Christian, if following Christ comes with carrying a cross, which it does, right? Take up your cross and follow me. That's what he said. Take up your cross and follow me. If it comes with carrying a cross, then we need to stop saying it would be better for me if. What happens on a cross? There's only one result of carrying a cross. Only one. You get nailed to it. Would be like modern day language, carrying an electric chair. Carrying a noose. You're basically, what Jesus is saying is, you too must die so that I live through you. So when we turn around and we say, it would have been best for me, it would have been better for me, it would have been better for me, we're throwing the cross aside and we're saying, I'm not carrying that dumb thing anymore. Let's go do what I think is best. And God, you get behind it, will you? Verse 13, Moses said to the people, fear not, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord, which he'll work for you today. Now, we're going to come back to this in a second, but let's keep going for now. He says, for the Egyptians who you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you. Moses speaking. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent. Being silent means be still. Doesn't mean don't open your mouth necessarily, although I'm sure he felt that way because their mouths are wide open with complaints. But he's basically saying, be still. Just quit freaking out. Calm down. And then he goes on. Again, we'll come back and talk about that in a few minutes, but let's go on. He says, the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Now, this is God talking to Moses. Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Implication here is that Moses has deflected their comments or relate them, however you want to look at it, to God, added his own concern to it. Hey, you know, Lord, they may have a point here. I mean, we are kind of trapped. I mean, I trust you. I followed you. I led him. Now, we don't know what he said, so I'm adding this. But you could tell by the tone when God says, why do you cry to me? That he's probably gone to God and said, you heard these people? I mean, yes, they're whining and they're complaining. And yes, they need to stand firm and be still and trust you. But I'm going to be honest, I told them that. But I'm kind of wondering myself, what's the plan here? You know? And maybe you've been there too. You are involved in the situation with someone else, and you're telling them all these encouraging things. It's going to be okay. God's got this. Just hang on. Just trust the Lord. But then you're driving away thinking, yeah, what are you doing? What is going to happen now? Is this really going to end bad? You know, and I think that's kind of what's implied here. It doesn't say it, but I think that's what's implied here. And he goes on and says, verse 16 says, lift up your staff and stretch out. God telling Moses, lift up your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it that the people of Israel may go through on the sea. Now, I imagine Moses is like, say what now? But we're told he does. I don't think Moses said, okay, cool, great plan, and jump. I think Moses probably was like, okay, let me just process this a second. But keep in mind, we just seen all these plagues. Moses has just played a role in all of these plagues and all of these things. So maybe he's like, okay, let's do this. But I love that God tells Moses, God doesn't just say, Moses, figure it out. He says act. He says, you lead them. But he tells them how. He gives them a plan. Now, for most of us, if you're like me, we probably stop at that point. Because whatever the thing is that seems impossible to get through, as soon as God tells us, here's what we're going to do, we're like, no, we're not doing that. That can't be God, because God would never say do something so dumb as that. Like, that's not going to be the answer. But that's not Moses. And it says, raise your staff. I saw some video some time ago talking about the magical staff of Moses, you know. And is this piece of wood is this Harry Potter 2.0? You know, is this a magic wand that he's raising? No. There's zero magic about the staff. So why raise the staff and not just your hand? Like, why does he tell him to do that? Well, he'd used this before, but it's not even that. What is that staff? It is a tool. The one and only tool used by a shepherd. That's what he was. Remember, he was a shepherd before God brought him in there for 40 years. With that staff, a shepherd would lead the sheep, and a shepherd would also defend the sheep from attack. He'd do both with that staff. And so there's a bit of a picture here going on by raising that staff, God working through Moses, but about Moses raising it almost as though he is a shepherd, pastor. That's what pastor means, is shepherd, is a sign that he is guarding these people of God and that he's leading them both. And you'll see that is exactly what God does. He leads and he guards here at the same time. Verse 17, I'll harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they'll go in after them, and I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his hosts and his chariots and his horsemen, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I have gotten glory over Pharaoh and his horsemen and his chariots. Glory here is not a glowing force behind the head of a saint. It is not that whatsoever. That is not what glory means. And God, you may think, well, God sure is being prideful here. Number one, yes, of course he is. Created all things. He deserves it. He's worthy of it. We would see that as pride because nothing that we know of is worthy of glory. But God is. It's not prideful for him to want it. He's worthy of it. And what glory is just a focus of worship. It's when you move worship towards somebody or something, you are glorifying it. And glory was being given to Pharaoh. It was already happening. That's the point here. Worship was being ascribed to Pharaoh, most powerful man on earth, ruler of the whole world, conqueror, king, whatever else, commander of armies, all these things. They even believed him to be God on earth, or God's son on earth. And so God's Jehovah is dealing with that. And it will not be Israel who gets glory by defeating Egypt. This is huge. It will not be Israel that gets glory out of defeating Egypt. It will be Jehovah or Yahweh who gets it. And only him. Only him. And everybody does know it. Whether they believe it or not, they all know it. The whole world knows this story. Whether they believe it or not, they know it. And they know that it's God who fought Pharaoh because the weapon is an ocean. The weapon here is an ocean. There's no way anybody else in Israel could have done this. This is God alone. And even now, listen, even now, we're celebrating Jehovah or Yahweh because of it. We're celebrating God because of it. 3,500 years later. Think about that. 3,500 plus years later, we're still celebrating what he did when he did that. Or at least reading it and studying it about him. So, verse 19, let's keep going quick. It says, then the angel of the Lord, who was going before the host of Israel, moved and went behind them. So now the plan goes into action. Moses goes to raise his staff, and the angel of the Lord goes, who was in the cloud, the pillar of cloud, moved from before them and stood behind them. Now you want to know what that's all about? We talked about that last week. But now the point is he's moved from guide to guardian. So he's coming behind them. And he comes between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel. And there was a cloud and the darkness. So it's telling you both cloud, and remember the cloud was of fire because we're at nighttime now. We're entering the nighttime hours. And the cloud is providing fire or light, and there's darkness. And it says, and it lit up the night without one coming near the other, neither army nor darkness. So what it's telling you is it's almost like that plague of darkness back one. Remember one of those plagues of darkness was of darkness, And in that plague, it said the people of Israel still had light. So it was not a lunar eclipse or solar eclipse, It was supernatural. And you have the same thing going on here. On one side of this wall, the people of Egypt are in, or one side of this cloud, however you want to look at, pillar, the people of Egypt are in the dark. And on the other side, the people of God have light or are able to see, but even as the sea is splitting. So that's the scene. And God provides here a way of escape, but it's awesome to know that he also defends. Sometimes defense is what we really need, right? Sometimes and I've prayed these words, and it may sound silly, but I've prayed these words on more than one occasion. God, I need you to have my back. Like I just need you to have my back here. I'm following you. I trust you. I know you'll lead and all these things, but I need you to have my back. I'm scared. Whatever it may be. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove, not Moses, the Lord drove the sea back by a strong wind. It doesn't say the wind did. It said the Lord did it using a wind. And that wind would have been coming in their face because it tells you it's an east wind. And so they were coming from west to the east. So this would have been coming straight into their face, strong enough to push the sea back. And that tells you again that this cloud, this pillar of cloud, was unique because it didn't move, even though there was a strong east wind coming straight into it all night long. All right? Even as they begin to walk into the sea, this is still going on because it goes on all night, this wind. And it made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. So, again, some say, hey, the wind did it. There's an explanation here. The wind did it. But that doesn't explain dry land. That doesn't explain walls of water being divided. You'll see that in a second. It doesn't explain 1 million people being able to cross. What's being said here is that God commanded his creation to act, and it did. This is the key. God commanded the sea to do something, the wind to do something, and the man to do something. All are his creation. He's acting, but he's telling all of his creation to act here. He controls the wind, he controls the sea, he controls the man. But what's wild is, what if the sea or the wind, much like the man frequently, and I'll use myself as an example, what if he said no? I ain't doing that. And we're like, well, the sea's not a thing. The sea's not I know, but I'm just saying. We look at God splitting a sea open with the wind and think how amazing it is, but like he tries to do that in our lives too. And too often we look at circumstance and we say, no, I'm not going there. I'm not doing that. That's not happening, or that doesn't make sense, or that won't work. In the New Testament, huge, in the New Testament, Jesus displays that he is this person. And I'll tell you where, because most people preach the passage in the New Testament about Jesus, and they say, you know what, it's better for you to be with Jesus in the boat in the storm than to be on the shore, doing well, because Jesus can calm the storm, or all these different things, which is nice, But when Jesus is in this boat with his disciples in the storm, what that's about is Jesus speaks to the storm, and it says the wind and the waves. In fact, the verse says, how does it go? The wind and the waves were calmed. He said, peace be still. And they literally, the water and the sky grew calm, and the disciples, marveled, and they said, what sort of man is this? That even the sea, the winds and the sea obey him. In other words, this is not a man. What kind of man do the sea and the wind obey? The same one who is speaking to the Red Sea and the east wind and splitting it open. It's the same person. The same person who commands what we're reading in Exodus is the one who was with the disciples in that boat. Exodus 14, verse 22. And the people of Israel went into the middle of the sea on dry ground, and the waters being a wall to them on the right hand and on the left. So again, back to the crossing. So we have this picture of them going into this dry ground. Now, how the ground was dry, if it's like, how is that even possible? It's the bottom of an ocean. If that's what you're struggling with, I'm sorry. Like, I got bigger problems than that if I'm struggling with something, okay? But I'll show you a couple more pictures. So that crossing I mentioned before, this is a kind of a shot of what it looks like. There's a narrowing there a little bit, because you got to remember, if you see a ocean or a lake or whatever, they're usually like they drop or they're cliff down. Like, it's not a matter of just it's dry. Now you have to navigate down and back up. We're the million people. So there is a smaller spot there. Keep going, because I don't remember what's in here. Okay, yeah, I know that. Don't worry about it. I just found it because it's easy. So the very top is the floor at that one crossing, and the others are the different other crossings down through the Red Sea over there. But you can see, if they did come off of that beach, as it's called, it would have been very easy to go down and back up that. It slopes down, not crazy, and it slopes back up pretty good. Was there more? Oh, and two other things that are interesting. So you can find all this stuff online, and it's trustworthy because it predates AI, so don't freak out. But this is coral that's been found all in that area. There's lots of different pictures of it. It's not a wheel. It's not a chariot wheel now because the wood is long gone. But the coral has grown in the shape of it as though it grew over it and retained that shape. There's several of them. There's another one like in the shape of wheels in the bottom where the coral has grown over something. So there's some solid evidence to believe that what we're reading today occurred in that general area, or that it occurred at all, but in that area for sure, even though it's been a long time ago. So when we face the impossible, like, we need a miracle, right? That's what we started this with. We need a miracle. We need something that breaks the laws of physics. Something that goes above and beyond the cause and effect scenario. You got to have something that is done above the rules. And the only way that works is by having someone who is above the rules to break them for you. Somebody who is, and we're all in them. There's no escape gravity. You know, we're in them. You can defy gravity. You cannot escape it. We're in them. You need somebody who transcends it, who is above it, and that would be God, and he does. He holds a place above these laws, and therefore he can break them. Not that that's a bad thing. I don't mean that. I mean, he can change them. He can adjust them. He can alter them. He can defy them, however you want to look at it. And the sad thing is that most people nowadays, for sure, just attribute it to luck or random act of nature. A glitch in the matrix, some silly thing like that, because it's easier for that than to believe that a creator could do it or would do it. People look for explanations. Oh, it wasn't the Red Sea, it was the Reed Sea. That's the most popular one. It's just like the resurrection. Everybody's got arguments for what they think really happened. Same thing here. So they say it's the Reed Sea, not the Red Sea, although there is zero evidence in the Bible for that. It is crystal clear that it was Red Sea in the Bible, and ironically, the Red Sea still exists and still has that name. So it's absolutely stupid to think it's Reed Sea. But let's say that's the case. The reason they say it is because it was only 2 feet of water. And so the wind dried that up, and they were easily able to go across. But that doesn't explain walls of water on both sides, as being described here. It also doesn't explain how the Egyptians drown in it. We're going to read that in a second. But always remember, the Bible is perfectly written. Perfectly written. What's the first verse in the Bible? I've told you this before. First verse in the Bible. In the beginning, God. Oh, well, that's talking about the beginning. That's John 1:1. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created heavens and the earth. Stop. If you trust that, if you believe that to be true, there is not one other word in here that should be hard for you to swallow. Splitting a sea is child's play if he created the heavens and the earth. Nothing. So you only have to get past the first verse, and the rest of it is only who is that God. That's all it is. Or you say there is no God, then put it down and walk away. You know what I'm saying? Because the rest of the book is just explaining to you who that God is that created the heavens and the earth. The fact that he did these things shouldn't be that difficult to believe. But believing is key. These Israelites weren't just watching a miracle. They had to act. They had to walk down into it by faith. And some faiths say that we all have a miracle. We all got our miracle. We need to claim our miracle and make it our own. And you earn it by believing. Like, I believe well enough, I'm going to get my miracle. But there's so many flaws in that. So many flaws in that in the Bible. But the biggest thing to remember is, what are the Israelites doing when this sea splits? Complaining, whining, crying, anything but earning it, to say the least. God is doing it himself. God is doing it for his name. God is doing it because he made a promise and he keeps his promises, unlike we do. But they still have to trust him and they still have to walk in. One person said it like this: we believe in miracles, we don't rely on miracles. We believe in them, but we rely on the Lord, not the miracle. So verse 23, the Egyptians go in after him, and in the midst of the sea, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and his horsemen. So Egypt goes in too, man. They got faith in God, right? No, they are blindly, out of anger and fury and hate, following them in and oblivious. They're not even paying. They don't even care how it's open. It's just open. Maybe they're even defying God to do something about it. I don't know. But they don't trust in God. Israel's not trusting in the ocean. Israel's trusting in God. And they're going in straight after him. And God is hardening their hearts. It says so. But it's only in the sense of giving them the desire of their heart. You want it so bad? Come get it. In verse 24, and in the morning watch, that's between 2 and 6 a.m. So it ended around sunrise. So the Lord, in the pillar of fire and cloud, looked down on the Egyptian forces. So God has been moving between the two of them, and I'm finishing up here. But God has been moving between the two as they've crossed through the sea, keeping them separated. And now Israel's kind of gotten out, and God's turning his full focus now back on the Egyptians. And they go into a panic, clogging their chariot wheels so that they drove heavily. Probably the ground here now was dry, but probably water's coming back in. And the Egyptians said, let's get out of here. Let's flee from before Israel. Let's leave them be. We're not chasing anymore, for the Lord fights for them against us," or the Egyptians. Now they know, but it's too late. Now they know, but it's too late. Think about that. For one, recognizing God is not the same as trusting him. Not the same as following him. In the New Testament, it says the demons know who he is and tremble. Doesn't mean anything to say you're for real. But the other beautiful side is it tells us he fights for us. He is faithful to his word, not because of how good we are, because of how faithful he is to what he said he would do. Verse 26, Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea. The water is going to come back in and close in on the Egyptians." And that's exactly what happens. It says that God threw them in verse 27 into the midst of the sea. So even as God uses creation again, the wind ceases blowing, the water caves over, the man is holding the thing, God himself is ensuring that this thing is over. Over. Thus says verse 30, thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians on the other seashore washing back up dead. Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptians. So the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant. There's a sense of fear here, not terror. He just saved them. It's a sense of like humility. This God is so big and so powerful and so able and so holy and so incredible. And he's so other than me that though I believe in him and I trust him, I'm also a little bit humbled in a fearful way. So let me close it with this. I know we're a little long. Let me close because there's a lot to cover. But Exodus 14, back in verse 13, he said, "Fear not, stand firm, see the salvation of the Lord, which he worked for you today. The Lord will fight for you. You only have to be silent." This is a key thing. You want a great verse to memorize? That's a great couple of verses. What a great statement. This is what he's saying quickly. He says, don't fear. So you want something practical? Here's what you do with all this. Don't fear. Don't panic. That's all he's saying. Don't panic. You might be afraid. Don't panic is what it means. See, he says. See, just watch. Just keep your eyes on me. Just watch. Don't panic. Watch me. And he says salvation. That's deliverance from death. That's deliverance from slavery. That's what salvation is. He's saying, see, don't panic. Watch me. I will provide salvation. I'll deliver you from death. Stand still. That means stop freaking out. Stop trying to do it yourself. Stop trying to find your own way. He will work it for you. Literally says that. Guys, that is the cross. That's what that's about. I know the moment is the Red Sea, but what he's talking about is the cross. He's not saying, hey, God will give you whatever it is you want. He's saying, be still and know I will provide salvation. You cannot earn it. You won't be able to earn it. The sea is death. Death is behind you and death is in front of you. Death is on every side of you. You are all living face death. It's coming. And he's saying, but you just be still. I'll provide a way, and that way was the cross. That's the picture of Christ in all of this. So stand with me. I'm going to pray, and we'll sing another song. But let me pray for us first. And here's your kind of think about it point. If you're always avoiding battles in your life, can you really expect God's power to be at work in your life? All right? Think about that. Let me pray. Lord, thank you so much again for your word. A lot to cover today, but man, such a great story. And Lord, help us remember that if we say we believe in your word and we say we believe in you, then this thing happened. And if this thing happened, you're the same God. And whatever it is that's in our life that seems impossible or beyond our any hope, now, Lord, there's always hope. You can split a sea. But the greatest hope of all is in salvation, that you provided a way through death, that we can come to the other side alive, that we can be with you and in your presence and alive, even when it seems impossible, that the cross made that way. You came yourself, died, faced our death, and rose, defeating it, did the impossible so that we can cross. Lord, I love you, and I pray that all people would know that today. And we say it in Jesus' name. Amen.